The phone rang at exactly 7:15. I remember because I just finished my dinner. Leftover pot roast, nothing fancy, and I was settling in to watch the evening news. The number on the screen was Derek's, my son, my youngest, 38 years old, and living upstairs in what used to be his childhood bedroom. Though it looked nothing like it did back then. He'd been there for 24 months, 2 full years, rent-free. Before I walk you through this part 1 of the story, please tell me your name, the city you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. I answered with the casual warmth of a father who thinks he knows what to expect. Hey, son, what's up? There was a pause, just long enough to make my stomach tighten, in that peculiar way it does when you sense something's off. When Derek finally spoke, his voice had an edge to it I didn't recognize. Harder, more demanding. Dad, we need to talk. I need you to do something for me. I shifted in my chair, the leather creaking beneath me. Sure, Derek. What is it? I need half of your pension. Now. The words hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. I actually pulled the phone away from my ear and looked at it, as if the device itself had malfunctioned. Half of my pension? The pension I'd spent 43 years earning, working double shifts at the plant, sacrificing weekends and holidays, putting away every spare dollar I could while raising 2 boys on my own after Linda left? I'm sorry, what? My voice came out strangled, uncertain. You heard me. I need half of your monthly pension payment. Starting now. It's for a business opportunity, Dad. A real game changer. But I need to move fast, and I need capital. I sat there, frozen, my mind racing through possibilities like a drowning man grasping for anything solid. A business opportunity? Derek had been between jobs for the past 2 years. Before that, he'd cycled through a dozen different positions, retail manager, insurance sales, something involving cryptocurrency that he could never quite explain. Each time, he'd come to me with grand promises about the next big thing, the opportunity that would finally set him straight. Derek, I don't understand. Half of my pension? That's how I live. That's how I pay the mortgage, the utilities, the food we both eat. How could I possibly? Dad. His voice cut through my stammering like a blade. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. This is my shot. My one chance to turn everything around. I've been working on this for months, and the opportunity just opened up. But I need to act now, or someone else will take it. The thing about being blindsided is that your brain doesn't work right. It scrambles, trying to catch up with reality, trying to make sense of something that defies all logic and expectation. This was my son, my flesh and blood, the boy I'd held in my arms when he was born, the child I'd taught to ride a bike, the teenager I'd stayed up worrying about on prom night. And now he was demanding, not asking, demanding that I hand over half of everything I had to live on. What kind of business opportunity? I managed to ask, though my throat felt like sandpaper. I can't get into all the details right now, but it's solid, Dad. Really solid. A buddy of mine from college has an in with this tech startup, and they're looking for early investors. The returns could be massive. We're talking 6 figures within a year. There was again the familiar pattern, the vague promises, the can't quite explain the details evasiveness. I'd heard all before, each time ending with Derek needing money, needing help, needing me to bail him out of whatever mess he'd gotten himself into. But this was different. This wasn't asking for a few $100s to cover rent somewhere else. This wasn't requesting a loan to fix his car or pay off a credit card. This was demanding half of my lifeline, the financial foundation I'd built over decades of backbreaking work. Son, I need time to think about this. This is a big ask, a really big ask. Time is exactly what we don't have. His voice rose, taking on a desperate quality that made my chest tighten. The investment window closes in 48 hours. If I don't move now, I lose everything. All the work I put into this, all the connections I've made, it'll all be for nothing. I closed my eyes, and suddenly I was somewhere else, somewhere in the past. I was standing in the kitchen of our old house, the one we had to sell after Linda left. Derek couldn't have been more than 7, and he was crying because I'd told him we couldn't afford the expensive sneakers all his friends had. I remember kneeling down, putting my hands on his small shoulders, looking into those tear-filled eyes. "Son," I said, "I know this is hard. I know you want what the other kids have. But we have to be smart with our money. Every dollar counts. Someday you'll understand. Someday you'll thank me for teaching you the value of sacrifice, of working for what you want." He nodded through his tears, wiped his nose on his sleeve, and hugged me tight. "I understand, Dad. I'll work hard. I'll make you proud." The memory dissolved, and I was back in my chair, the phone pressed against my ear, listening to the breathing of a man I barely recognized. "Derek, I can't just hand over half my pension. That's not how this works. I need to see a business plan, talk to your partner, understand what exactly you're investing in. And even then, I'm not sure I can." "Forget it." His voice went cold, flat. "I should have known you wouldn't help me. You've never really believed in me, have you? All these years, all your little lectures about responsibility and hard work. But when I finally find my opportunity, when I finally have a chance to make something of myself, you won't even give me a shot." The accusation hit me like a physical blow. "That's not fair, Derek. That's not fair at all. I've supported you for 2 years. Rent-free. I've supported me? You've let me live here because you're lonely, Dad. Because you can't stand being alone in this house with your memories and your regrets. Don't act like you've been doing me some huge favor." The line went dead. I sat there in the silence of my living room, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. My hand was shaking. My whole body was shaking. 76 years on this earth, and I'd never felt so utterly lost, so completely unprepared for what was happening. The television droned on in front of me, images flickering across the screen that I couldn't process. My mind was stuck in that phone conversation, replaying every word, every inflection, trying to understand how we'd gotten here. How had my son, the boy I'd sacrificed everything for, become this person demanding half my livelihood? How had the relationship between father and son deteriorated to the point where he could speak to me with such contempt? I thought about the past 24 months. Derek moving in had seemed like a temporary solution to a temporary problem. He'd lost his job, something about downsizing, he'd said, and he needed a place to stay while he got back on his feet. "Just a few months, Dad," he'd promised. "I'll find something new, save up, and be out of your hair before you know it." But the months had stretched on. Job applications that never seemed to go anywhere. Interviews that somehow never resulted in offers. And always, there were expenses. His car needed repairs. He had to pay off some old debts. He needed professional clothes for interviews. Money flowing out, nothing flowing in. And I'd enabled it. I could see that now, sitting in the darkening living room as the sun set outside my window. I'd enabled it because I loved him, because I wanted to believe that this time would be different, because the alternative, cutting off my own son, forcing him out onto the street, seemed impossible, monstrous even. But now he wanted half my pension. I stood up, my knees protesting the movement, and walked to the window. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful. Families in their homes, living their lives, dealing with their own problems. Did any of them face what I was facing? Did any of them lie awake at night wondering how to say no to their own children? The guilt started creeping in then, insidious and familiar. Maybe I had been too hard on him over the years. Maybe I had been so focused on teaching the value of money, the importance of hard work, that I'd somehow damaged him, made him feel like he could never measure up. Linda had said as much when she left. "You're too rigid, Thomas, too unbending. You're going to crush that boy's spirit with all your rules and expectations." Was she right? Had I crushed his spirit? Was his current situation, unemployed, desperate, demanding money from his elderly father, somehow my fault? No. I shook my head, pushing the thoughts away. I'd done the best I could. I'd worked myself to the bone to provide for my boys after Linda walked out. I'd been at every school play, every parent-teacher conference, every baseball game I could manage after pulling 10-hour shifts. I'd taught them values, morals, the importance of integrity and self-reliance. Mark, my older son, had taken those lessons to heart. He'd built a successful career, married a wonderful woman, given me grandchildren I adored. He'd thanked me more than once for being tough on him, for not letting him take the easy way out. But Derek had always been different. Softer, maybe, more prone to dreaming than doing. And I tried to account for that, tried to adjust my approach. But perhaps I'd failed. Perhaps I'd pushed when I should have encouraged, lectured when I should have listened. Or perhaps, and this thought made my stomach turn, perhaps Derek was simply who he was, and no amount of parenting, good or bad, would have changed the fundamental trajectory of his life. I heard footsteps above me. Derek's room. He was pacing, back and forth, back and forth. The old floorboards creaked with each step, a rhythm I'd become intimately familiar with over the past 2 years. Late at night, those footsteps had often kept me awake, wondering what he was doing up there, what he was thinking, what plans he was making that never seemed to materialize. Part of me wanted to go upstairs right then, to knock on his door and try to talk this out, to ask him, really ask him what was going on. What did he need the money for? What was this business opportunity that was so urgent, so time-sensitive that it couldn't wait for proper vetting and consideration? But I didn't move. Something held me back. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was fear. Or maybe it was a growing certainty that if I went up there now, I'd either give in to his demands, anything to avoid conflict, anything to keep the peace, or I'd say something I could never take back. So I stood at the window, watching darkness fall over the neighborhood, and I made a decision. I would not be rushed. I would not be manipulated. I would not hand over half my pension based on a vague promise and a 48-hour deadline. If Derek wanted my help, truly wanted my help, he would have to come to me with transparency, with honesty, with a genuine plan I could evaluate and understand. And if he couldn't do that, if he refused, then I would have to face a truth I've been avoiding for 2 long years, that my son was not the person I had raised him to be, and that continuing to enable his behavior was helping no one, least of all him. The phone in my hand buzzed. A text message. From Derek. I need an answer by tomorrow night. This is important, Dad. Don't let me down. My hands tightened around the phone. Don't let me down. As if I was the one who'd been failing, who'd been disappointing, who'd been taking without giving for 2 solid years. I typed back slowly, my thumbs clumsy on the small screen. We'll talk tomorrow. I need more information before I can make any decision. The response came immediately. There's no time for that. I need a yes or no. Are you going to help your son or not? And there it was, the ultimatum, the line drawn in the sand. Choose now, without thinking, without questioning, without protecting yourself. Choose me over your own well-being, or prove that you're the selfish father I've always suspected you were. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The words wouldn't come. Instead, I turned off my phone and set it on the side table. Tomorrow would come soon enough, and with it, answers I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. But tonight I needed to think. I needed to remember. I needed to figure out how I'd gotten here, and more importantly, how I was going to find my way out. As I settled back into my chair, the weight of the evening pressing down on my shoulders, I realized something that chilled me to my core. I was afraid of my own son. Not physically. Derek had never been violent. But emotionally, I was afraid of his anger, his disappointment, his ability to make me feel like I'd failed him even when I'd given everything I had. And that fear, I understood now, had been controlling me for longer than I cared to admit. The question was, what was I going to do about it? Sleep didn't come easy that night. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Derek's footsteps above me until well past midnight. When I finally drifted off, my dreams were troubled, fragmented things. Images of Derek as a child mixed with flashes of bank statements and empty wallets, of his face twisted in anger, of my own father shaking his head in disappointment. I woke at 6, as I always do, my body trained by decades of factory work to rise before the sun. The house was quiet. Derek never got up before 10 anymore. I made my coffee in the kitchen, the familiar ritual grounding me, giving me something solid to hold on to as I prepared for what I knew had to come next. I needed to understand. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. After my second cup, I did something I'd never done before. Something that made my hands shake and my conscience scream in protest. I went upstairs to Derek's room. The door was closed as always. I stood outside it for a long moment, my hand hovering over the knob, arguing with myself. This was an invasion of privacy. This was a violation of trust. But then again, what trust was there left to violate? My son had demanded half my pension and given me a 24-hour ultimatum. Surely that changed the rules of engagement. I turned the knob slowly, wincing at every small creak, and stepped inside. The room was a disaster. Clothes strewn across every surface, empty food containers piled on the desk, the bed unmade, and surrounded by a fortress of discarded items. But it was the desk that drew my attention. Paper scattered across it, some crumpled, some marked with coffee rings. I moved closer, my heart pounding in my chest. Bank statements, credit card bills, collection notices. My breath caught in my throat as I picked up the first statement. Derek's checking account, showing a balance of negative $417. The transactions told a story. I didn't want to read. Cash withdrawals at odd hours, payments to companies I didn't recognize, overdraft fees stacked on top of overdraft fees. The credit card statements were worse. 3 different cards, all maxed out, one with a balance of $12,000. $12,000. The minimum payments alone would be more than $400 a month. I sank into Derek's desk chair, my legs suddenly unable to support my weight. How long had this been going on? How had I not known? The collection notices were dated over the past 6 months, increasingly urgent in their language. Final warning, legal action pending, sent to collections. But it was the documents underneath that truly shook me. Printouts from websites I had to read 3 times to understand. Sports betting sites, online casinos, fantasy sports leagues with entry fees in the hundreds of dollars, page after page of losses, of deposits made and balances depleted, of a spiral I couldn't have imagined in my worst nightmares. This wasn't about a business opportunity. This wasn't about a tech startup or an investment window closing. This was about debt, about addiction, about a hole so deep that half my pension wouldn't even begin to fill it. I heard a sound behind me and spun around, my heart leaping into my throat. Derek stood in the doorway, his hair disheveled, his eyes bloodshot. He was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Anger, yes, but also something else. Fear, maybe, or resignation. "What are you doing in my room?" His voice was flat, emotionless. I stood up, the bank statement still clutched in my hand, and I felt something inside me shift. The fear I'd felt last night, the uncertainty, the guilt, it was still there, but now it was joined by something else. Anger. Real, hot anger at being lied to, manipulated, treated like a fool. I think the better question is, what have you been doing, Derek? What the hell is all this? He glanced at the papers in my hand, and for just a moment, his facade cracked. I saw shame flash across his face before hardening again into defiance. You had no right to go through my things. I had every right. The words came out louder than I intended, echoing in the small room. You're living in my house, rent-free, demanding half my pension, and you're sitting on mountains of debt you never told me about. Gambling debts, Derek? Really, it's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. Explain to me how you've managed to rack up tens of thousands of dollars in debt while living here for free. Explain to me what happened to all the money I've given you over the past 2 years for expenses and emergencies. He moved into the room, his jaw clenched, his hands balling into fists at his sides. You don't understand. Those bets, those investments, they were calculated risks. I was this close to hitting big, Dad. This close. I had systems, strategies. It would have worked if I just had a little more capital, a little more time. I stared at my son, and I barely recognized him. The excuses, the rationalizations, the complete disconnect from reality. It was like talking to a stranger. Derek, this is investing. This is gambling. This is addiction. And the business opportunity you called me about last night, is that even real? Or is it just another way to get money to feed this problem? He turned away from me, running his hands through his hair. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, almost defeated. The opportunity is real. But yeah, I need some of the money to pay off the most urgent debts. If I don't, they're going to garnish my wages when I do get a job. They're going to destroy my credit completely. I'm trying to fix this, Dad. I'm trying to get out of this hole, but I need help. The pleading tone in his voice tugged at something deep inside me. This was my son, my baby boy, and he was drowning, reaching out for a lifeline, begging me to save him. But I thought about my friend Greg, who I was supposed to meet for lunch later that day. Greg, who had been through something similar with his own son 5 years ago. Greg, who had mortgaged his house to pay off his son's debts, only to watch him rack up more within months. Greg, who had learned the hard way that you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. How much do you owe in total? I asked, my voice steady now, clinical. Derek hesitated. About $35,000. $35,000. I said it slowly, letting the magnitude sink in. That was more than a year of my pension. More than I had in savings. More than I could possibly help with without destroying my own financial security. I know it sounds like a lot. It is a lot, Derek. It's a massive amount of money. Money you threw away on pipe dreams and desperate bets. And now you want me to sacrifice my retirement, my security, to bail you out. I'm your son. The words came out as almost a shout. Doesn't that mean anything to you? Doesn't family mean anything? And there it was. The guilt trip. The manipulation. The suggestion that my love for him should override my common sense, my self-preservation, my own needs. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw the same pattern I'd seen for years. The same cycle of crisis and rescue, of promises and failures, of my giving and his taking until there was nothing left to give. Family means everything to me, I said quietly. That's why I've let you stay here for 2 years. That's why I've helped you, supported you, believed in you even when you gave me every reason not to. But this, I gestured to the papers scattered across his desk. This isn't me being your father. This is me being your enabler. And I can't do it anymore. His face went pale, then red. So that's it? You're just going to abandon me? Let me drown. I'm not abandoning you. I'm refusing to drown with you. The silence that followed was heavy, oppressive. We stood there, father and son, separated by more than just a physical space between us. Separated by choices and consequences, by love and limits, by hope and harsh reality. Derek broke first. He grabbed his jacket from the back of his chair and pushed past me, his shoulder hitting mine with enough force to make me stumble. I heard his footsteps pounding down the stairs, heard the front door slam with a violence that made the house shake. Then silence. I stood in his room, surrounded by the evidence of his self-destruction, and I felt something inside me break. Not my resolve, that was stronger than ever, but something else. Some last vestige of the illusion I'd been clinging to. The belief that everything would somehow work out, that Derek would eventually get his act together, that our relationship could return to what it had been when he was young. I gathered up the papers slowly, methodically. Bank statements, credit card bills, collection notices, printouts of betting slips and casino websites, the documentary evidence of a life spiraling out of control. I carried them downstairs and spread them out on my dining room table. Then I sat down and began to read through everything, line by line, trying to piece together the full picture of what Derek had been hiding from me. The more I read, the worse it got. The gambling had been going on for years, not months, long before he'd moved in with me. The debt stretched back through multiple addresses, multiple jobs, multiple attempts at getting back on his feet, that I'd supported financially without ever knowing the full truth. I'd been a fool, a blind, trusting fool. My phone rang, startling me out of my dark thoughts. It was Greg. Tom, we still on for lunch? I looked at the paper spread across my table, thought about Derek storming out, about the confrontation that was surely still to come. Yeah, I said. Yeah, I really need to talk to you. Everything okay? You sound rough. I'll explain when I see you. Thanks, Greg. I hung up, and returned the documents, but my mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about what Derek had said. Doesn't family mean anything to you? As if family was a one-way street. As if being related gave him the right to demand, to manipulate, to guilt me into self-destruction. But family did mean something to me. It meant enough that I'd spent the last 2 years trying to help my son. It meant enough that even now, even with all this evidence in front of me, part of me still wanted to find a way to make this right. The question was, could I help Derek without destroying myself? And more importantly, would helping him actually help him, or would it just enable him to dig himself even deeper? I thought about my father, who I'd lost 10 years ago. A stern man, not given to displays of affection, but rock solid in his values. He'd worked hard his whole life, and expected the same from everyone else. When I'd gotten into trouble as a young man, nothing like Derek's situation, but trouble nonetheless, my father had let me face the consequences. He'd refused to bail me out, refused to make my problems his own. I'd been angry with him then, furious even, but looking back, I understood. He'd been teaching me a lesson about responsibility, about consequences, about the importance of standing on my own 2 feet. And it had worked. I'd learned. I'd grown. I'd become the man I was today because my father had loved me enough to let me fail. Was that what Derek needed? To fail? To hit rock bottom and claw his way back up on his own? The thought terrified me, because rock bottom for Derek might mean homelessness, bankruptcy, consequences I couldn't bear to imagine my son facing. But the alternative, giving him the money, watching him burn through it, and then coming back for more, that terrified me too. I heard a car pull up outside. Through the window, I saw Derek getting out of an Uber. He looked calmer now, but there was a determination in his walk that made my stomach clench. He came through the front door without knocking, found me at the dining room table, and stopped short when he saw the papers spread out in front of me. "We need to talk," he said. "Yes," I replied. "We do." He sat down across from me, and I saw it in his eyes. The calculation, the planning, the preparation of arguments and emotional appeals. He'd gone out to regroup, to strategize, to figure out how to manipulate me into giving him what he wanted. And in that moment, I realized something crucial. This confrontation wasn't going to be the end. It was just the beginning. Derek wasn't going to give up easily. He'd push, he'd plead, he'd try every trick in the book to wear me down. The question was, could I stay strong? Could I hold the line against my own son? I was about to find out. "Dad," Derek began, his voice carefully modulated, reasonable. "I know what you saw looks bad. I know I should have told you about the debts. But you have to understand." "No," I interrupted. "You have to understand. I'm not giving you half my pension. I'm not bailing you out of this debt. Not without some serious changes on your part." His face hardened. "What kind of changes?" "Rehab, therapy, a genuine job search with daily accountability, financial counseling, and a concrete plan to pay back every cent you owe, with no more gambling, no more sports betting, no more chasing pipe dreams." And if I don't agree to all that, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I knew I had to say. "Then you'll need to find somewhere else to live by the end of the month." The words hung in the air between us like a death sentence. Derek stared at me, his eyes wide with disbelief, then narrowing with anger. "You're kicking me out? Your own son. I'm giving you a choice, Derek. Get help, and I'll support you through it. Or continue down this path, but not under my roof and not with my money." He stood up so fast his chair fell backward, clattering against the hardwood floor. "You're going to regret this, Dad. You're going to regret the day you turned your back on your own flesh and blood." He stormed upstairs, and I heard his door slam. Then more footsteps, the sound of drawers opening and closing, of things being thrown into bags. I sat at my dining room table, surrounded by the evidence of my son's self-destruction, and I wondered if I just made the right choice or the worst mistake of my life. Only time would tell.